Bill Gates, Sam Altman, Ray Dalio, all kind of cautioning about an AI bubble. Do you think we're in an AI bubble?
I already see 2 or 3 things where today AI transforms industries. In Silicon Valley, probably would historically have cost you $5,000 in legal fees. You do that in 10 minutes of interacting with an AI that goes along with your subscription of $20 a month.
What keeps you up at night?
Probably the biggest thing is
Reid Hoffman co-founded LinkedIn. He was an early investor in Facebook, Airbnb, and he's one of the most connected people in Silicon Valley. Today, he's putting everything he has on AI, but not just to change the way we work, but to even change how long we live. Is this time different?
It is different insofar as it's a new, much more general purpose technology than earlier technologies.
I want to find out from him, are we in an AI bubble? Will humans still work in 10 or 20 years? And where should we be investing right now?
This current administration has ended the post-World War II American world order.
Do you think the damage can be reversed? This is What's Uptin with Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
My pleasure.
So I want to start with LinkedIn. Naturally, I was at GTC in NVIDIA this week, and I met a girl. She has 350,000 followers on LinkedIn from Germany. No Instagram, no YouTube. She's a LinkedIn influencer. This has become a thing. Did you ever imagine this happening, like the LinkedIn influencers?
No, I think it's one of the things we learned during the path in terms of what happened. We thought there would be the sharing of business intelligence and content, because part of the thing about navigating the modern world of professionals, what should I be learning? Who should I be talking to? What are the career changes? What are the industry changes? We knew that sharing, the collaborative intelligence of the network, would be useful. The notion of having influencers and having that be a follower concept, that was something we learned by looking at the rest of the social web.
And saying it'll eventually come to LinkedIn.
Yeah, and part of the theory on LinkedIn is to say, well, there's a bunch of things that are very useful within the social web. There's things where you go, hey, that's entertaining, talking about sports, social games, other kinds of things. But what are the things that help people with their work? What are things that help people with their careers? And that's what we do at LinkedIn. Now, when we see something out in the social web, it's like, actually, there's a version of that would be helpful for work, then we do it.
Talk about video, because 2020 brought the emergence of TikTok, YouTube brought YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, et cetera, et cetera. LinkedIn brought its own version of short form vertical video. Anecdotally, it was really big for maybe 6 months, and then it stopped being big, and now kind of a lot of people are wondering, is it going to be? Do you see that as a big part of LinkedIn going forward?
Well, I think for sure, part of what we have to do is we have to figure out what the version is that works for the network, and the reason why I think it's for sure is because the same notion where you have LinkedIn influencers, you have either business leaders or experts or content leaders or coaches or any of these things who are establishing a presence and talking to a set of people and having that content be useful for people navigating their careers and work. The same reason that a post or an essay was useful, video is also useful. You see the person. Now, I don't think we'll be seeing TikTok dances. I think that would be a bit of a surprise. I don't know what a business rain dance looks like, for example. But I do think you'll see the reason it's do I find you compelling as a potential leader and understanding about a transformation like AI or something else? Actually, in fact, seeing you, interacting with you, getting that sense. Video is part of what brings that tangibility for human connection. And so I think that will persist. What version of it we continue to iterate on to say what works for the network.
What do you think it was about LinkedIn that made it successful when other apps, many other apps failed?
So, well, that's decades of work. But I think part of it was staying very true to the mission, right? So the mission is we try to be time saving, not time spending. We try to be, what are the things that matter to you in terms of what you're doing at work? So for many, many years, people are like, well, LinkedIn's boring. It's like, well, we're not trying to be exciting. We're trying to be useful, right? So
that's almost counterintuitive to other platforms, which, inherently are consuming more of our time because they're addictive, right?
Yes. And our thing is, it's how do you get the most bang for your buck in the shortest time frame? It doesn't mean that we say, zero time frame, but it's kind of like the question of what are the things that are most helpful to you? And you go, good. I've got the things I need right now. I'm moving on. It's great. Because part of being kind of work focused is like you'd rather work 8 hours than 10 hours if you can get the same stuff done. Same thing in terms of kind of use of LinkedIn. And so that focus, and then also being like, for example, like one of the things is like LinkedIn, one of the principles is civility. We don't permit you to be like hostile, right, to people. That's just not the right environment. And you say, well, freedom of speech, like, great, go yell on whatever social platform of your choice is. That's not what we do here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never see that kind of content on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if it's because people are representing their professional selves or if LinkedIn is doing a good job of suppressing it. Or
the short answer is both.
Okay, there you go. Let's talk about some of your AI companies. You have Inflection, Manus. Tell me about them. I mean, what you have a lot of options of how you want to spend your time. What brought these into light?
So Inflection first, because Mustafa Suleiman and Karen Smonyan and I had the idea that chatbots are going to be important. This was pre-ChatGPT. So ChatGPT came out while we were building. Part of the idea with Inflection, which, this kind of great, still going company, not as big as ChatGPT because they got out there first. And that's great. But like part of the thing is what you do as an entrepreneur is you picture the future. And part of picturing the future is we will all have multiple AI assistants that we're close to that help us navigate our life. There'll be things obviously in a LinkedIn context like work life and so forth, but there's also like call it a travel assistant or life assistant or everything else. And one of the things we realized was that everyone in the AI space was focusing on IQ. And IQ is only one important element of that kind of lifetime assistant. EQ is also important. Like, how do we establish trust? Is because, isn't because, well, you seem to be smart. There's a lot of smart people you don't really trust. It's because you seem to be in tune with me. You have a understanding of who I am, what I want, and it is much more natural to interact with you if the emotional tone is right. So we were the first out at the substantive EQ portion. And now, of course, there's other Qs that have been added to this too. There's not, some with inflection, but like AQ, like can I act on your behalf? Action quotient. SQ, am I socially intelligent within the group? Right? There's a stack of these things going. That was inflection. Inflection was the first one. Manus is partially like, what are the really important things about AI that are beyond chatbots, beyond coding assistants, beyond work, work process automation that can make a massive difference in human life? And health is obviously one of them. Now, one part of it is you'll have a medical assistant who can say, hey, I've got this rash on my hand, should I be alarmed? Should I do anything? What should I do about it? And you can take a picture. But like, if you can cure critical diseases that are killers like cancer or other things, that makes a massive difference to all people, young, old, rich country, poor country, et cetera, et cetera. And so Siddhartha Mukherjee and I co-founded Manus because AI is the right technology that gives us the first real shot we have of curing something that is as difficult as cancer.
How is it going?
It's going well. It's early days. These take years to do. We built some pretty interesting fundamental technology about how do you kind of identify targets, because one of the things that's weird about cancer is there's a cancer. You're like, there's thousands of cancers. It's kind of a description of it. So what are the targets that are the different kind of things that are doable? Which molecules might be a therapeutic in this? And even in this earliest prototyping work, we've actually already discovered some potentially interesting therapeutic molecules. So it's very early, right? So it's kind of like, there's this thing about, you file like this drug development form and you kind of say, hey, we're going to look at this drug. And so we've done that. And that's just prototyping the AI technology that we are in the process of building.
You have Bill Gates, Sam Altman, Ray Dalio, all kind of cautioning about an AI bubble. It's the talk of so many, headlines right now. Do you think we're in an AI bubble?
Categorically, no. I think that I think to some degree, bubble is kind of an expectation question. So are there some financings of billions of dollars into AI companies that will fail? Yes. That's not a bubble. A bubble is when like the promise of an industry has overly grown and the whole thing falls down. The reason why I think categorically no is I already see 2 or 3 things where today AI transforms industries. There's obviously all the coding stuff, which will be very intense this year, and the coding will then spread to others. But like, for example, if anyone hasn't tried to say, hey, there's this, I'm going to use, Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini as my legal assistant, try it. Doesn't mean that there aren't room for lawyers, but like you go, oh, I'd like to offer you a term sheet for something. You can literally go in and say, here's the things that I think should be in the term sheet. Can you provide me a draft term sheet? You look at it and go, oh, add in some of these clauses and withdraw those. Get another version. That, in Silicon Valley probably would historically have cost you $5,000 in legal fees. You do that in 10 minutes of interacting with an AI that goes along with your subscription of $20 a month.
Sure. Well, so on that note, I have a few friends been laid off within AI or tech companies within the past year. Oh, you also have, tens of thousands of layoffs happening at the Amazon sales forces. What do you say to people who say that, these jobs are not going to come back? And some people are saying we could hit 10% unemployment, 20% unemployment.
So look, I think that the transition periods are always difficult. So I don't want to undersell the difficulty. And so the very first thing for a lot of companies is to go, oh, I can save 10% of my costs with a 10% workforce reduction because I've got this kind of productivity and all the rest. But by the way, the reason why companies grow employees is not because they're always like looking to trim employees. They're looking to have like kind of high revenue and business impact per employee. And they hire more employees as they can have a more high business impact. So it's not like the usual way that people chart this is they think there's a fixed amount of work. And oh boy, now the work's going to be done with 80 people rather than 100 people. So 20 people are going to get laid off. And it's like, there's no such thing as a fixed amount of work. There's, for example, when you say, even if this company says, hey, I only need half the engineers that I had before, by the way, it's going to take them years to get there, just to be clear. And the other, the kind of the layoffs, a la Square, kind of Block and everything else, those are all, we mishired. There's nothing about AI in that right now. I mean, there's nothing that shows that. But if you say, hey, I'm going to have half, what did the other half do? Well, the other half go and join other companies. The other half go and join other startups and so forth. Like companies
start their own companies,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but it doesn't undercut the transition difficulties. So there are transition difficulties, and nearly for sure, all of us are going into those transition difficulties. And my general recommendation to people is start learning to use AI, because how are you on the right side of that? Because as companies are adjusting, they're like, we need people to help us with AI. Great. That can be you.
Be one of them. Yeah. You seem to be an advocate for using AI to be superhuman. And I think a couple of people say this now, but it's like, you won't get replaced by AI. You'll get replaced by someone who does AI really well, or who knows AI really well.
And who's working with AI.
Yeah. How about though, like long term, let's say 10 years from now, should governments be experimenting with universal basic income? I mean, do these, because that's the whole point of generative AI, right? It's like, I love the analogy of the elevator, right? Or the car didn't replace this, right? The jobs came back, or it took half of America to do farming for the other half. I get all of that. But then when you bring up the generative nature of AI, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, is this time different?
Well, it is different insofar as it's a new, much more general purpose technology than earlier technologies. So, and it affects not just one industry, but like all industries. And we're in a network connected environment, so it affects them faster and broader. So all of these things make it new. And what's more, as a GenTech technology, it's the first beginning where you go, for example, cranes did replace human workers in what they're doing, but it was kind of a very specific, focused way of doing that. Here with agents, you can replace human workers, say customer service agents, with just AI, and that there will be a bunch of replacement where that agentic technology plays that way. So it is different, speed, size of impact, etc. But what I think is not different is that, you never can say fully well, what's the job? What are the new jobs that are going to get created? And you never say that. That gets evolved out. You don't know, right? So, and they go, well, but maybe this time there isn't new ones. And it's like, okay, there is some chance, and we'll have to navigate the episode, but I would be willing to take a fairly substantive bet that there will be new jobs. Now, the transition's still really difficult. So we said, what should governments be doing? Should they be doing UBI? Should they be doing other things? Actually, in fact, what they should be doing is workforce transformation, right? And many different experimental things to see which ones. Because, when you tend to talk to government people, say, great, we'll set up the community college. We'll have community colleges have AI education. And you're like, it's not gonna be that simple, right? So you have to be dynamic and trying with a number of different things. And, some of the projects I support, like Opportunity Work and others, are trying to figure out that kind of a nimbleness of network to be adaptive to this. And that's what I think we need to do. Now, just as a last note on this, what you want to be doing is monitoring what's actually happening, not trying to build for what you theoretically think will happen, because just about everybody who theoretically thinks they know what'll happen are only right by accident. Whether you're an expert, a government person, an economist, we don't really know. And a lot of people find that scary, but by the way, and I appreciate that, I understand. But by the way, in that scary, as an entrepreneur, I look at that as an interesting opportunity, because those transformations, it's like when we brought in electricity into society, everyone thought it was really scary. Can you imagine the modern world without electricity? The opportunity there is huge. Transition, very difficult.
So in that case, I mean, you hear people from Silicon Valley once in a while come out with this doom and gloom prediction, and they're dropping out of the board or whatever. I mean, you're obviously much more optimistic than that, but what makes you optimistic on that?
Well, so a couple things. One, history. The doom and gloom that you've heard, by the way, if you went back and look at the discourse around the printing press, it's very similar to the discourse around AI. Oh, it's going to collapse society. People are going to have a whole bunch of misinformation. They're going to, the social infrastructure is going to collapse and so on. And by the way, human beings in disruptive change do create problems. So after the printing press, 90 years of religious war, right? So, we humans have to navigate well. So that's one. History is that. Two is, I'm a very strong believer that the future is what we make it, right? And so we can steer. I don't go, oh, things are going to be bad. Ah! I go, oh, steer well, right? Like engage, do things. And it doesn't mean that there aren't, potholes and, traffic accidents and other kinds of things as you're going. But staying in the game and steering towards a much more positive future is how you get there. The way you get to a positive future is not by avoiding bad futures, but by steering towards positive ones.
And to what role has government regulation helped or prevented where you think AI should be heading toward this transformation of many industries?
So I think primarily what you want to be doing when you have even as a amazing, like this massive tsunami of AI technology, you want to be doing two things. One, prevent things that are genuinely like just no exceptions catastrophic. So you go bioterrorism, cybersecurity. It's like, okay, we should try to prevent that stuff. And in preventing that, even if we have bad or clumsy regulation that has some other unforeseen costs, that's worth preventing those things. Then you want to be, that's the top thing, because like a general prox I use is you should regulate when bad regulation is better than no regulation, right? So why do you have regulation in the financial system? Because even though it impedes the development of new financial system technology, the financial system breaking is a serious problem for society. So bad regulation better than no regulation. The second thing you should be doing is monitoring, as opposed to saying, well, I'm insightful and I think that we're going to have a problem with people who are working in the customer service agents, customer service agency. Yes, probably. So I'm going to pre-predict what all the transitions should happen. Like, well, no one can do that effectively, including that person who thinks that. So what you should do when you say, I have a worry, a specific worry, whether it's, job transitions, misinformation, other kinds of things, say, well, how do we measure that? How do we monitor that? So what should regulation be doing? It should be saying, generate that measurement, generate that kind of like, here's the thing I want you to be measuring, and I want you to be reporting. And what's more, if I'm really concerned about it, and I don't think you'll necessarily be reporting honestly, I want you to have your auditors report it, right? So the third party, that's why we have auditors, is saying, yes, this is what's happening on this concern in our measurement thing, so that you can say, oh, look, this is really growing. We have a problem here. Now let's start addressing it, as opposed to pre-guessing every problem.
Is college still worth it?
Yes, but for strange reasons. The strange reason is a combination of the network of people that you meet at college and the fact that you spend some time getting ready on the launch pad for society. There are many things that are broken on college. It's a question around, for example, the degree system, what you're learning. Like, for example, one of the classic things is most universities are saying, no AI, because AI is cheating. You're like, everyone's going to be using AI for everything that they're doing, including, by the way, graduate students and professors. You're adopting an idiotic thing. It's like saying, no driving on the highway, you just have to run, right? Like, it's like, it doesn't work. So there's a bunch of transformation that's going to need to happen, but it is still useful. Now, the problem is that our college system has kind of gotten to a place where it's like it should be had at any price, and everything has an ROI to it. And while, for example, liberal education is a very good thing to get, it's not, again, at any price. So if you have graduates who are, this is a little bit of a extreme statement, but like they're graduating with an urban studies degree with $300,000 in debt, that's a very bad challenge to start from.
So then what would you major in, or what would you advise someone to major in?
So, well, generally speaking, again, hard to predict the future. There will be more and more software transformation. So you say, well, CS. Well, CS sort of. You want computational thinking. As is demonstrated this year, you don't really need to learn coding per se. That's like a lot of CS majors tend to be I learn how to, write in Java, or I learn how to write in C++ or whatever, Rust, a whole bunch of different frameworks, Python. What you actually need to be is thinking about how software amplifies your work. Whether your work is, I'm a historian, or your work is, I'm a journalist, or your work is, I'm a financial analyst, or anything else. So you should be learning that. And you should also be learning the kind of, what are the set of skills that would be important for the future? Now, one part of it is human skills will be more important. So like, for example, we know that AI will be later in how are we doing, like, for example, a sales thing of you and I interacting together. We will be that's not a thing that AI will be anytime soon in. So like, how do we work together as a team? So you want to be learning all of those kinds of things too, but like still thinking, still, LLMs are terrible at math, right? So yes, so it's like there's a whole stack of stuff you should be learning, but it's not like, I don't know if it's dating my age, but like one of the things was there's this old film called The Graduate, and they say plastics. It's like there isn't a specific kind of thing where you go,
do this.
Just learn this. Yes.
Yeah, it seems, I saw 7 or 8 AI CEOs on stage yesterday, many of them billionaires, but seeing them interact was really interesting because you're talking about social skills.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really shocked the way they interacted and the way they were kind of introverted. And I mean, I shouldn't be shocked because it's nothing new necessarily to Silicon Valley, but it almost made me a little scared. Like, if these people are running the next wave of the transformation of every single industry, is there going to be enough empathy or the human side of understanding what they're actually building? So how does someone, I mean, there's a lot of genius people out there that are total nerds or introverts, like what should they be doing?
So, well, there's still a lot of room for people who are on the spectrum and people building stuff, as we see a lot of great technologists building the current AI wave. That's of course part of the reason why at Inflection we did EQ, because it's actually really important. And it is the thing that part of what I've been trying to, whether it's writing super agency or other things, is to kind of try to bring a certain humanism back to the construction of new technology businesses, and how do people think about it? What are the things they do? So, for example, a classic one is, kind of my book before Super Agency, Impromptu, was like, it's amplification intelligence. How do we think about AI is amplifying human capabilities? It doesn't mean that we won't also do replacement, but put as much energy or more into how does that make us better in terms as humans, in terms of what we're doing, a full spectrum, not just IQ, of course, super important, but like wisdom, right? Or like even compassion, as ways that you're operating. And I think, the way that you do that is you add that into the market, you get that into market demands, you get that into the general discourse, you go on podcasts and talk about it. And that's part of how the industry starts responding to that more.
Yeah. When you think about college, I almost wonder if the whole model needs to be rethought of, because my dad, studied civil engineering, got his PhD, was in the same office for 40 years, right? Using what he learned in his PhD. I mean, he's doing research and all of that, but, versus me in my 20s, I think I had 7 different jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And so it almost begs the question of now, when you think about what's going to happen, even what's happening right now, what you're learning in the university, in every industry is going to be changing, every few years. Have you thought about that? I mean, have you thought, do you think that we'll see the sort of evolution of what it means to even go to university, whether it's more certificates or, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, for sure. I think that so one of the things that Opportunity Work does is say there's a whole bunch of jobs and skills that a university degree is not the actual, says nothing about your capability of doing it. It's not positive, it's not negative, it's just irrelevant. So, and by the way, that means that lots of people, like say, for example, you didn't have the economics to go to the super expensive universities, you were working to put your family or yourself, but you still have the skills, you still have the talent. And so we both want to make an ability to construct all of those, to learn those skills and deploy them, and also an employment environment that encourages and allows it to happen, because we want talent to get there. And that's part of the reason why projects like Opportunity Work, Tear the Paper Ceiling, what are stars, like people who are highly talented people who do not have college credentials that can work for things. All of those things are an important part of the future.
Last year, you expressed concerns that U.S. tariffs and spending cuts could inadvertently help China's tech industry and damage America's competitiveness in AI. I've been to China multiple times. I've been to Tencent and Alibaba. I went to the Shanghai Auto Show last year and saw crazy, Chinese EV companies that you and I, well, you've probably heard of, but most people have never heard of. Where do you stand on that now? I mean, when it comes to U.S., China, and AI?
So, look, as an American, I'm very I want the U.S. society to prosper and kind of continue to have a great influence in the world order, because I believe in kind of a lot of our fundamental American values. Now, that being said, the various things that the current administration's been doing, tariffs being one of them, are kind of causing the rest, even former friends, to no longer like us. And you can see Europe, Canada, other places that are formerly like us being their closest partner, they're now like, well, you're treating us badly, so we'll take a look at who is our best trading partners. And if it's China is our best trading partners, great. China's not coming in and saying, do this for us or pay this additional tariff. And so they just say, hey, great, we'd love to do business with you. That's how you do business. Right? You do business collaboratively. You do business not by ordering people around, not by trying to play like a mob boss with protection money, et cetera. You do it by collaborating. So I think we actually already have done serious damage to not only because your average American citizen doesn't understand. It's like, look, if the ability for a bunch of U.S. industries to including the tech industry, to sell overseas diminishes, then less money flows into the U.S. And if less money flows into the U.S., there's less money everywhere. It's less money for the schools. It's less money for taxes. It's less money. There's all kinds of things where that gets to less money for. And that's the reason why something that they may think is abstract, like trading partnerships, is actually necessary for the health of their communities and the health of their families.
Do you think the damage can be reversed, or we have to wait till future presidency for that?
So I think this current administration has ended the post-World War II American world order. So I don't think it's reversible. I think there's a reconstructible, but it will take a lot of work to do that.
Interesting. I want to speak about, a little bit about Reid and the advice that Reid would give. So let's start with LinkedIn. I mean, what would your advice be to grow on LinkedIn?
So on LinkedIn, well, it's a little bit like also AI, which is start using it, experimenting.
Okay.
What people don't realize is if you do just a little bit, it can actually really benefit you. Now, say, for example, the most basic, fill out a profile, have some real information in your profile. You go, well, I did that, nothing happened. Yes, because when you do that, it's like filling out a thing when people are searching, do they find you, right? And who knows, maybe they find you tomorrow, maybe they find you 6 months from now. But it's so little work to do. Like filling out a relatively robust LinkedIn profile is under 10 minutes, right? It's relatively straightforward. So that's one thing to do. Another thing is when you connect to people who, and this is one of the things people are like, well, who should connect to? It's like, well, connect to people who know you and trust you, right? And it could be, by the way, your friend's uncle met you and liked you, and so on, and connect with them, great, connect with them. Because then when you look through, like, okay, who would be people that would be useful for me to talk to about what I might be doing with my career, my jobs, and so forth. And you start doing searches at 2Degree, and you realize your friend's uncle knows somebody at this company that you're interested in about, and you can ping them and say, hey, do you mind if you get me connected so I could just talk to them and see if there's a good fit? And so sure, that your friend's uncle's, colleague may not, the student, but because you come in through an introduction that's, not hardworking, solid, smart, etc. Great. Then I may not be the right person, but this other person at the company is the right person to talk to, and because I'm introducing, you'll do that. So that kind of engagement starts creating serendipity. And what you want to have is you want to increase your serendipity of something that could be magical that would help you with a career. And those would be very first things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I always, when I was I worked at MTV News actually back in the day, and I was like, I was covering Justin Bieber and stuff that I didn't enjoy. So I said, you know what, I want to work in business news. And so I started, every time I would meet someone at a party or a networking event or whatever, I would say, yeah, I like my job, but I'm looking to do this. And it was amazing how many times people would say, look me up on LinkedIn, see how many, if I have someone you want to meet, so it was kind of like this digital library of a database that I could kind of be like, hey, do you actually know this person? When it comes to posting though, I want to talk about ChatGPT. There's this thing that I've noticed where, and people are now starting to create memes and make fun of the LinkedIn posts where it's like, and I'm not talking about the I'm thrilled to announce, like that's been there for a while, but the M dash, the it's not challenge, it's redirection, and so there's these instant things where you're scrolling ChatGPT and you're like there's these instant scenarios where you're scrolling LinkedIn and you can say like, this guy used ChatGPT, not just used, but probably just copy and pasted a ChatGPT prompt, and then again and again and again. And I almost find myself and some other people I know, it's almost like our unique selling point as LinkedIn creators is not even opening ChatGPT and like, let me just write this from my own voice to ensure 100% no one assumes it's AI.
Yes.
So, I mean, in terms of creation, you have your podcast, your books. I mean, how do you think about that, differentiating the AI sounding content from Reid?
Well, I think the most central thing now, you're asking a person, as you know, who created a digital twin of themselves, who co-wrote the first book with GPT, right, Impromptu. So now I think it's important to be transparent. So I think going to ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever, and producing something and then just pasting it in, I think that's kind of dishonest. And it doesn't mean that's horrible, but it's like part of what you want to be is when you're establishing trust and brand, is people like trust, like, no, I think this is worth your reading. Like I looked at it, I touched it, etc. Now, I have no objection to someone producing a Claude or Copilot or Gemini thing and then saying, okay, I'm looking through it, and then like touching it up to something that they think is really good, because it's like, here, I recommend this to you.
Yeah, it's actually a value to your audience. It's a value to you. It saved you time. It enhanced your,
But what you should do is say, when I'm posting, I am taking a moment of trust. Like, am I taking your attention with some care that I really recommend that you pay attention to this? I own this in terms of what I'm talking to you. And so I think that's really important. And that's how I think people should approach it. So it's not that I actually think one should use AI tools, but you should see as like, is this good enough that this is what I would want people to be reading that I produced when all of my friends had to sit there and listen to it? And would I hold my head high versus go, oh, oops, sorry about that? Like that's how you should look at it when you're doing posts.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about today's new tech talent, the new graduates coming out of Stanford? What do you make of them?
Well, look, I think every generation is smart. I think that part of what I think is this is Generation AI. So I think that part of what they are is just like each new generation is kind of native in the current tech. And I think that's something that's super important. I look forward to learning more from them about this. Look, I have some sympathy of like, wow, this is a lot more chaotic than when I read, kind of graduated, which, and by the way, that's both disorienting, vertigo, but it's also opportunity. So I kind of encourage them to think about the opportunity of it.
Chaotic in terms of funding and meetings and the way things are moving just faster.
Like what's a good thing to do with your career? It used to be kind of like much more simply tracked. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, it's a very chaotic melee.
But you're optimistic, it seems, in the talent in the next generation.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think anybody who goes, oh, this generation has problem X, and even if a generation does have problem X, they're like, that's what the other generation said about you. So, come on.
That's true. They're always judging each other. Yeah, that's true. The last question I want to ask you is, what keeps you up at night?
Probably the biggest thing is, there's a whole set of things, and it's not just world chaos, war in the Middle East, it just like, it goes on and on and on.
It's a lot right now.
Yes, right. But probably the biggest one is, let's not fumble the opportunity about how magical AI can be for us. And we can. There's all kinds of ways we can fumble it. And part of the reason I'm being very positive is not because there won't be traffic accidents and, things going wrong. Of course there will be. There was things going wrong with every launch of technology, including electricity and all the rest. But like the possibility, like for example, like it's really a question of which year do we all have a medical assistant on our smartphone? It could be this year. That's better than today's average GP. And think of what makes the difference. Like relatively few people have access to a doctor and almost nobody at a moment's notice. That's massively transformative to human life. That's the kind of thing I don't want to fumble.
Do you think we will, like, there's a lot, I mean, I've been reading articles, there's a lot of like longevity research happening right now. Do you see a time where we're living to 140, 150?
I think we will be figuring out how to live longer and longer. I don't think it's kind of the quick unlock, because the principal ways that we've expanded our average lifespans, which we've done a lot of low-hanging fruit on, is eliminate various forms of child mortality. That really helps with age. Improve basic nutrition and a bunch of other things. That helps a lot. Measure basic things that kind of kill a bunch of us, heart attacks, that kind of thing, and try to do that. Now it starts getting into the hard part of it, right? Which is, okay, so we're all in a version of, we're all dying from cancer. Just the question is, does something else get us first, right? And so what are the things that we can do to kind of create that cellular rejuvenation? And I think that's going to be a hard path. I think AI will help with it. I think other things, but I don't think it's some people are like, no, we're all going to be living there 100, but naturally in a couple of years. Like, I don't think the science is there yet.
Reid, thank you so much. This was a really insightful conversation. I learned a lot and I really appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to this episode of What's Uptin, where I bring you inside the minds driving tech, money, and power. Follow along on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow my personal account on Instagram @Uptin. Would love to connect with you.